They definitely ramped things up with Saw 3, and it's kind of like they took what I said that I didn't like with Saw 2 and reverted back to things that worked well with Saw 1. And what I mean by that is we don't have too many characters in this third Saw film. The first Saw film, we have two main characters, at least two people taking part in the game. The second film had too many people, and this one we just have a couple, and I think that that works so well. And the gore is definitely intensified as well. What I will say is it's quite slow. It's a very slow film, and I'll talk about the narrative without spoilers in a moment, but it is very slow. But when the gore happens, it's amazing. There was one moment where I actually swore out loud, quite loudly. I don't, when I'm just watching a film at home on my own, I'm not vocal. I don't interact with the film very much. But when it's something like this forces me to exclaim quite loudly, that to me is a sign that it's affected me. And that to me means that, in some part at least, it's a pretty good film. So, Saw 3 was released in 2006, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, written by Leigh Whannell and James Wan. And we have Tobin Bell as John. We also have Shawnee Smith as Amanda and Bahar Soomekh as Lynn and Angus Macfadyen as Jeff. And there won't be any spoilers for this film for the most part, but I will mention a couple of spoiler details towards the end of this, but I will give it a spoiler warning. And there might be spoilers for the previous two films. In fact, there will be a couple of things I say that refer back to the other films, so that's just worth bearing in mind. So in this film, John is very much on his deathbed, and Amanda, who had an interesting character development in the previous films, has kidnapped Lynn, who is a doctor, and has commanded that she keeps John alive. And the threat is a collar, and I use the word collar quite lightly, around Lynn's neck, which as soon as John flatlines, it'll go off and her life will be over. So her incentive there, of course, is to keep John alive because she doesn't want her neck to blow off. Meanwhile, we also have Jeff, who is playing the game, if you like, and what is quite different is that the space he travels is so vast. In the first film, it was just one room. The second film, it was the house, but quite a small space. But with Jeff, it seemed like he was going down corridor after corridor, and it was kind of difficult to get a sense of where he was. But that works really well because obviously he would have the same feelings. So as a viewer, what he was going through was something that I was able to feel to some degree. The confusion of not quite being able to get a full visual of the space, I think it worked really well. And we learn that something happened to his child. A lot of this is about forgiveness and fairness and second chances, and the people within the game that he meets are all people who were involved in the loss of his son in one way or another, and he has various chances to save them while they're being tortured. But first of all, to save them, he has to do something obviously quite painful, and also secondly, does he want to save people who had a hand in justice not going the way it should have done? And I think that that's so fascinating, and I think any one of us faced with that situation would probably not know what to do. I mean, instincts might kick in, but I don't know what my instincts would be, and it's so fascinating. There were several different methods of torture, and one of which I loved. I thought it was horrific, but very well done. I'll share which one it is in a moment with the spoiler warning. But for me, my favourite scenes were the scenes with John and with Lynn. Amanda, I actually don't like. I can't stand her as a character. I feel like she was starting to really irritate me. I don't know if we're meant to like her, but to begin with, I kind of liked to dislike her. But as this film went on, she did just start to irritate me a bit too much. But the scenes with Lynn and John, I really enjoyed, and I thought they worked really well. And were also quite disgusting at one point. I will share that with a spoiler warning in a moment. I enjoyed it. It's not an overly complex narrative, yet it's exceptionally thought provoking. It's fascinating. They could have gone in all kinds of directions with this, but I think what they chose to do with it worked really, really well. I won't explain the ending, but the direction it took was not actually what I was expecting. And what I've learned with these Saw films is to expect the unexpected, and I love that. I love it when horror films and mystery films are just so surprising, and this is absolutely one. I loved it, really thoroughly enjoyed it. If I were to rank them so far, I'd go 1, 3, 2. So the first one to me is still the strongest, but this one is a relatively close second. So a few spoilers of just a few things that stood out to me as being particularly awesome. So these are relatively big spoilers. The first thing that made me feel sick is the torture where the guy's body was being twisted and then his neck was being twisted. And, no, yeah, that was nasty. That's horrible, but it worked really well. But that's not the bit that made me kind of shout out loud. The bit that made me shout out loud is actually something that, on paper, I didn't think it would bother me. If I read this description, I wouldn't be squeamish. For example, if somebody wrote about slicing their eyes open, I can't read about that, I can't think about it, I can't look at it, obviously. But with this moment, on paper, I could read about it and it wouldn't bother me, but seeing it, no thank you. So it's the bit, it makes me feel so sick. It's the bit where, I think it might have actually unlocked a new fear in me. It's the bit where she's drilling into John's skull and then she's peeling it back, and I can't. Honestly, I didn't think it would bother me that much when she kind of said, to save him, I would need to do this and this and this. I thought, okay, well, if she does that, that'll be interesting. And then she did it, and I. It's the point where she's about to peel the top of the skull back and the blood pools around it, and the expletives that were coming out of my mouth at that point are just ridiculous. It is a really enjoyable film. I'm really pleased that I liked it because I still want to watch the other six before the new film. So hopefully they will keep going. They will keep getting better and better. It's surprising me how much the gore is affecting me because usually I'm not that squeamish, and I take that as a good sign. Saw 3 is definitely an enjoyable film, and I'm really looking forward to Saw 4.